Hi, this is Professor George, and I'd like to talk about Symbol and the Chrysanthemums by John Steinbeck. The Chrysanthemums is one of my all-time favorite stories, but in some ways it does remind me of the story of an hour with an alternate ending. The story takes place mostly on a ranch in California in the Salinas Valley. The two main characters are a husband and wife, Henry and Eliza Allen, and it doesn't take long for us to realize that they have a very traditional marriage. He does the manly things, like raising horses and running the ranch and conducting business. She, on the other hand, takes care of the household and plants a little garden of chrysanthemums. They carry out these roles not because one is better at it than the other, but because society says this is what they should do. In fact, Eliza has very masculine qualities. She is initially described by the narrator in very mannish ways. Read paragraph 5 for more on that. And the word strong is used more than once to describe her. As well, she is 35 but has no children, which also de-emphasizes her femininity. In fact, Eliza is clearly a businesswoman just as much as her husband is. She negotiates very well with the tinker. And she also could do ranch work, which even her husband acknowledges when he says, "You've got a gift with things." Unfortunately for Eliza, she has to put her gifts to use only in socially acceptable ways. Everything goes fine until a manipulative tinker comes along. How long did it take for you to figure out that he was a charlatan? First he says he's new to the route, and then he claims to know a woman down the road. He is full of lies. And Eliza is on to him until he does what all good salesmen do. He finds her button and shows an interest in it, something Henry never really does very well. After he admires her chrysanthemums, Eliza begins to open up to the tinker, so much so that she begins to offer him a few of her beloved chrysanthemums. And then, because Eliza is a very sensual woman, in paragraphs 71 through 75, she has an extremely sensual, almost sexual encounter. Go back and read those paragraphs for more. The encounter ends when the tinker snaps her back into reality by begging for food. The almost final blow comes when Eliza shares her secret desire to live unrestrained, maybe by living in a wagon as he does. And the tinker shuts her down by saying, "It ain't the right kind of life for a woman." So she finds out that he's just as sexist as her husband is. To celebrate Henry's recent sale, he and Eliza head to town for dinner. Along the way, Eliza sees the tinker's final insult. He has dropped her beloved baby in the middle of the road and kept the pot for his own devices. Looking away, she sees her life as it really is. She is stuck on that ranch unless Henry allows her to leave. And she has to even ask permission to have a glass of wine with dinner. Crushed with the knowledge of her own oppression, her own weakness, and finally that not even this little part of herself, the flowers, will ever be free, she turns away and cries like an old woman. Part of why I like this story is because I'm impressed by Steinbeck's deep understanding of the female psyche. He does an incredible job of helping us see Eliza both as she thinks she is and also as she really is. And one of the ways that he does this is through the effective use of symbols. Symbols are objects or actions which suggest more than their literal meaning. So they mean what they mean, but they also mean something more. In everyday use, for example, the quilts are a symbol. On the one hand, they are literally objects which Dee and Mama fight about, but on the other hand, they represent the family's heritage and the different ways in which family members think about things. And for Dee, even her name is a symbol. Most symbols, and I mean 90% of them, are concrete objects, things we can see or feel. Abstract things like happiness or love are usually not symbols. Okay, they're never symbols. Symbols can be inanimate, non-breathing things. They can also be characters, but not usually. Zora Hurston does a good job of using a character as a symbol in one of her short stories. A character named Otis Slimmons is like a snake invading the paradise of Joe and Missy Mae's life. Finally, an action like a clock ticking or a whistle blowing can sometimes, but not typically, be a symbol. But is this enough information to help us recognize a symbol when we see one? One danger in analyzing a story's symbolism is the temptation to identify everything as a symbol. Don't do it. Sometimes a book really is just a book. So then, how do you recognize symbols? One place to begin is with the title. Often, symbols may be part of the title, and the writer does this deliberately. Second, look for repetition. If an object really is a symbol, it will appear most often more than once. It may open the story, or it may end it, or it may even be both of those things. In a play called Raisin in the Sun, for example, by Lorraine Hansberry, the pot of flowers is a symbol of the family. And the play opens with Mama talking about and attending to the flowers, and it ends with her taking the pot of flowers to her new home. Third, ask yourself if the object, act, or character is significant to the plot. If you can answer yes to any of these questions, it's probably a symbol. Remember, finally, that writers don't hide symbols. You won't have to search for them. If it's really a symbol, it's going to stand out to you. When we write about symbols, we can take one of two approaches. First, we can identify 3 symbols and write a body paragraph on each one. And that's not a very creative approach to discussing symbolism. But it works if there is a story with a lot of symbols, like everyday use. Second, though, we can identify the main symbol and write about the ways that that symbol influences other elements. Now, the second strategy is usually more effective and more appropriate for college-level writing. Sorry about that. In the Chrysanthemums, the primary symbol is clearly the flowers themselves. And if we go through the checklist, we'll see that we can put a check mark by each object. The chrysanthemums are concrete objects. It's in the title. Number 3, we see the flowers repeatedly throughout the story. And number 4, the chrysanthemums are significant to the plot. And it's because of them that Eliza even talks to the tinker, and it's because of them that she realizes at the end that she's been manipulated and she realizes who she really is. So we hit the jackpot with this story. It meets all 4 criteria of a symbol. Most likely in the stories that you analyze, it won't meet all 4 of the criteria, but it should meet at least 1, and probably 2. But are the chrysanthemums the only symbols in this story? Probably not. The fog is a minor symbol. When it settles in the valley, it represents Eliza's sense of isolation. It also represents her diminished vision. When things are foggy, we can't see very well. And as the story progresses, we realize that Eliza can't see herself very well. Initially, she saw herself as strong and even masculine, but by the end of the story, she recognizes her weakness, her isolation, and her oppression. Are there other symbols in the story? Maybe there are. I'll leave that for you to figure out. I hope this has helped you understand what symbols are and how to recognize them when you see them. Thanks for listening.